What happens when a CEO buys coffee at his own café and hears the manager threaten an employee? Landon Lake hadn't worn a fake beard and glasses in years, but this morning he made sure every piece of his disguise was perfect. The mirror in his car showed someone older, less polished, with a tired look in his eyes. Nobody would recognize him this way. That's what he needed. The cafe he was headed to was one of 7 he owned. He'd bought the small coffee chain 5 years ago from a retired couple who built it from scratch. It had charm, a loyal customer base, and a reputation for treating staff well, or at least it used to. Lately, complaints had been trickling in: cold service, long wait times. A feeling that the place had lost its warmth. Nothing major on paper, but something felt off. His district manager swore everything was fine. Landon wasn't buying that anymore. He parked across the street from the cafe on 3rd and Mason, a busy corner in a neighborhood that had grown fast. He'd never met the local manager or the staff here. The company had grown enough that he'd stopped visiting every location. That was a mistake. He walked in just before 9. The place looked clean, but something was missing. The music was too low, the energy too flat. A couple of customers sat at tables, quietly sipping drinks. No laughter, no chit-chat, just silence. A young woman behind the counter smiled when she saw him. "Good morning, what can I get started for you?" she asked brightly. Landon glanced at her name tag. Amber, just a black coffee. "Medium? You got it," she said, cheerful. "Name for the order," he hesitated. "Louis. With an S." As she turned to prep the drink, a man in a black polo came out from the back room, barking into the air, "Amber, how many times do I have to tell you to speed it up?" "We're not running a daycare here," Amber flinched. "Yes, sorry, I was just, don't give me excuses. You're lucky I'm even letting you stay on the schedule this week." Landon's eyes narrowed. The man's tone wasn't firm, it was threatening. He stepped aside to pretend to check the pastry case, listening. "Seriously," the manager said, lowering his voice but not enough. "Mess up one more time and I'll cut your damn hours so low you'll be begging for shifts." Amber didn't say anything. She just placed the cup on the counter and whispered, "Medium black for Louis." Landon took the coffee. "Thanks," he said softly, then walked to a corner table. He didn't drink it, his stomach twisted. He hadn't come here looking for drama, he just wanted to see how things were running. But now that he'd heard that he couldn't ignore it, he stayed for over an hour, watching, listening. The manager's name was Rick. Mid-40s, built like a linebacker, voice like gravel. He didn't yell constantly, but when he did, it stuck. He snapped at a barista named Tasha for asking about her schedule. He told the dishwasher kid to quit acting like a baby when he asked for gloves. But worst of all was how he treated Amber. She moved like she was walking on glass. By 10:30, Landon had seen enough. He walked back to the counter. "Could I speak to Rick?" he asked. Amber looked up, startled. "Sure, I'll get him." Rick came out, wiping his hands on a towel. "Something wrong with your coffee?" Landon looked him in the eye. "I'd like to talk to you outside." Rick squinted. "Do I know you?" "No, but you will." They stepped outside. Landon removed his glasses and pulled off the fake beard. Rick's face went pale. "You're Landon Lake," he said. "I own this place." Rick's silence was long. "Look, Mr. Lake, I heard what you said to Amber and to the others. This isn't what we built this company on. You think fear is leadership? It's not. It's weakness." Rick opened his mouth, then closed it. "You're off the floor, effective immediately. I'll be back tomorrow. Don't come in." Then Landon turned and walked back inside. Amber was wiping down the counter, her hands trembling. He walked up. "Amber," she looked up, confused. "I'm not Louis," he said. "I'm Landon. I own this cafe." Her eyes widened. "I'm sorry you had to go through that. It's not acceptable. It ends today." Tears welled up in her eyes. But she nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. And for the first time that morning, Landon finally took a sip of his coffee. It was cold, but he didn't care. He had work to do. Landon returned to the cafe just after dawn the next morning. This time, no disguise, no hesitation. He stood in the quiet parking lot for a moment, watching the lights flick on inside as the early crew prepared to open. The air was damp with coastal fog clinging to his coat. He could see Amber moving behind the counter, her hair tied back, face focused. She hadn't seen him yet. He stepped in just before they unlocked the doors. The bell above the entrance gave a soft chime, and 3 pairs of eyes turned toward him. Amber stiffened, then quickly looked down, unsure what to expect. A young man at the espresso machine squinted at him, clearly trying to place the face. The third employee, a teenager carrying a fresh tray of croissants, froze mid-step. "Morning," Landon said. "Don't mean to startle anyone. I'm just here to observe quietly today. You all keep doing what you're doing." Amber gave a small nod and returned to preparing the pastry case. The others looked at each other but didn't say anything. By 7, there were already 6 customers waiting in line. The café moved with quiet precision, but Landon could feel the tension under the surface. Every action was measured. Nobody talked unless necessary. Even when a customer complimented the muffins, Amber only smiled briefly and thanked them before hurrying back to the register. Landon stood to the side near the end of the counter, sipping a hot coffee. A different flavor today, lighter roast. He watched interactions closely, how the team handled rushes, how they moved around each other, how they reacted to mistakes. When a lid was dropped or a drink took too long, glances darted, not at each other but toward the back hallway. Even though Rick was gone, his presence hadn't left. At 8:15, a woman in a dark denim apron arrived through the side door. Mid-30s, her hair tucked under a bandana, calm but alert eyes. She walked to Amber and spoke softly. Amber nodded and gestured toward Landon. The woman turned and approached. "You're Mr. Lake?" she asked. "I am," he replied. "You must be Clara." "I manage the Midtown and Eastwood locations," she said. "District sent me to cover here until we figure out staffing. Appreciate you stepping in." Clara nodded. "No problem, I've pulled doubles before." "Midtown runs smooth, so my assistant's covering there." She glanced toward the team. "They're good kids, just been walking on eggshells." "I can see that," Landon said. "I need to ask you something off the record." Her expression didn't change. "Of course. Did you ever get complaints about Rick?" "Anything passed your way?" Clara paused. "Not official ones. A few inconsistencies in labor logs, a couple of transfers that didn't stick around, but no one ever filed anything concrete, no write-ups, no HR triggers." He nodded slowly. "I want to speak to each employee individually today." "Off the floor, 10-15 minutes each. I'll rotate coverage. You want to start now? Let's do it." She returned to the counter and quietly tapped Amber on the shoulder. A few minutes later, they sat at a small table in the back hallway, away from customers. Amber looked nervous but sat straight. "You're not in trouble," Landon said. "I just want to understand what's been happening here." Amber folded her hands. "I don't know where to start." "Start anywhere." She took a breath. "It wasn't always like this. I started here 9 months ago. At first it was fine, busy but manageable. But once the old assistant manager left, Rick started putting pressure on everyone, cutting hours, yelling, threatening to dock pay. He picked favorites, mostly people who didn't talk back, and ignored the rest. "Did you ever report him?" "I tried. Once. Sent an email to the district inbox. Never heard back. After that, I stopped trying. I needed the hours." Landon's jaw tightened. "Why didn't you quit?" "I wanted to, but I have rent, school, and I liked the customers. I liked the job before it turned into something else." He leaned back. "You're not imagining any of this. I saw it. I heard it. I should have been here sooner." Amber looked down. "He told people they weren't allowed to sit during breaks, said it looked lazy, made one girl cry in front of customers. She quit that night." "What was her name?" "Janelle. Worked here a few months. He told her she talked too much like a child and customers wouldn't take her seriously." Landon didn't write anything down. He didn't need to. It was all locked in. "I appreciate you being honest with me," he said. "You did nothing wrong. You held this place together. That matters." Amber blinked fast, nodding. After she returned to the floor, Landon met with the others one by one. The teenager, Lewis, said Rick used to give him the worst shifts and refused to let him clock in early even when asked to prep. The barista, Tasha, said she was told her earrings were too much for a café, and was warned not to speak Spanish in front of customers, even when she was helping a Spanish-speaking guest. That last part made Landon's blood run cold. By mid-morning, he stepped outside and called the district HR rep directly. Pull every scheduling log, payroll note, and exit survey from this location in the last year, he said. I want names, I want patterns. And I want that inbox reviewed for missed messages. The voice on the other end stammered. Of course, right away. Back inside, Clara waved him over. We've got a problem, she said, voice low. What is it? There's a delivery guy here. Says Rick called in an order yesterday for double the usual supply, but it's not in the system. No invoice, no approval. Where is it? In the back alley, sitting in crates, milk, syrups, a bunch of frozen stuff. No paperwork? Landon walked with her through the narrow hallway and out the rear door. A nervous young man stood next to a hand truck, shifting from foot to foot. You the owner? He asked. I am. Look, I don't know what's going on, but Rick called direct. Said he didn't want the usual process, said he'd pay cash this week. I've got the text from him right here. He held up his phone, clearly uncomfortable. I don't want trouble. Landon scanned the message. It was unmistakable. Rick had bypassed the usual order system and tried to handle it off the books. Leave the crates, Landon said. We'll reconcile it, but this isn't on you. The delivery guy nodded and wheeled the items into the back room before quickly leaving. Clara looked at him. You thinking inventory skimming, or worse? I'm not jumping to conclusions, but something's off. We'll run the numbers. Inside, the lunch rush picked up. The team moved faster now. Amber called out names with more confidence. Lewis actually laughed when a customer made a joke. It wasn't perfect yet, but the shift was real. Landon stayed quiet, watching, calculating, not just what had gone wrong, but what had failed in his own chain of accountability. Rick hadn't just been a bad hire, he'd been protected by a system that didn't ask enough questions. A system Landon had designed. He waited until the last of the lunch crowd cleared before stepping back up to the counter. Amber, he said gently, you're off early today. Clara's got you covered, her brows knit. Am I in trouble? No, he said. You're going to take a few hours and meet me at the office tomorrow. I want your help designing the new training manual. She stared at him, stunned. You've seen what works, and what doesn't. That matters more than titles. As she stepped away to grab her things, Landon turned to Clara. We're not just fixing this store, he said. We're fixing all of them. This doesn't happen again. Clara gave a slow nod. I'll help any way I can. Landon didn't look away from the counter. The hum of the café was changing, not loud, not dramatic, just steady, real. Exactly what it should have been all along. By Thursday morning, Landon had already been at the café for nearly an hour before the doors opened. He hadn't slept much. After 2 days of reviewing internal logs and quietly interviewing former employees, the picture had sharpened into something uglier than he'd expected. Payroll discrepancies. Unlogged cash purchases. A pattern of employees resigning within 60 days of working under Rick. None of it had triggered the company's automated red flag systems because the data was split between scheduling software, HR documentation, and supplier logs. Nobody had ever looked at it as a whole, until now. Clara arrived just after 6:30, a clipboard tucked under one arm and her phone in the other. She walked straight to the back room without saying a word. That was fine. She knew what today was. Amber came in 10 minutes later, dressed in plain jeans and a charcoal gray sweater, a canvas tote slung over her shoulder. When she saw Landon counting inventory behind the counter, she paused. You're here early, she said. I needed a head start, he replied. You ready for the office visit? She nodded once, but her eyes drifted toward the register, where the morning barista, Tasha, was struggling to load the till while helping a customer. There was no sign of Lewis or anyone else. Clara had to cut Lewis's morning shift, Amber said quietly. His grandmother's in the hospital. He called her late last night. Landon looked over the floor. We'll cover it. It's not ideal, but 2 of us can hold it together if we keep the orders clean. Amber hesitated. I can stay. We can reschedule the office thing. No, he said. That's not optional. What you're doing matters. Clara and I can handle this. She didn't argue, just nodded and went to grab her coat. By the time she left, customers had filled 4 tables and the morning rush had begun. Clara returned from the back and took over the register. Landon moved behind the machines, pulling shots with a rhythm that came back faster than he expected. It had been years since he'd done this kind of work. His hands remembered more than his mind. Large oat milk latte, extra hot, Clara called. He turned, grabbed the cup, and passed it across. The woman on the other side took it, then glanced at him. You knew, he smiled, just stepping in. You're quicker than the last guy, she said, then walked off. Clara grunted. That's the 3rd person that said something like that this week. By 9:30, the line had thinned. Landon stepped aside to clean up the prep area and wipe down the cold bar. As he rinsed a pitcher, Clara approached. Got something you'll want to see, she said, holding out her phone. He dried his hands and glanced at the screen. A text chain. Amber had forwarded a screenshot from her old group chat with other ex-employees. One message stood out. A former dishwasher named Jared had posted a photo from last fall, a crate of expired milk with a sticky note that read, "Use first, don't tell." Below it, a message. Rick said if we threw it out, it was coming out of our checks. Landon read it twice. He looked up. When was this? October. The Midtown store had a supplier issue that month. Guess where the overflow ended up? He didn't answer. Instead, he walked directly into the back storage area and opened the supply fridge. Everything inside looked clean. Dated, properly rotated, but that wasn't the point. The point was how long it had been allowed to go on. He pulled out his phone and dialed. Full audit, he said when the line picked up. Every café, every manager. Start with food safety logs. I want eyes on every temperature logbook, every disposal record, every supplier invoice. Anything over 6 months old, pull it. Yes, sir. He hung up and turned back to Clara. We're not just cleaning up this store, this has to go company-wide. She folded her arms. You think it's this bad everywhere? No, he said. I think it could be. And that's enough. For the next hour, they worked in silence. Clara handled the register while Landon managed drinks. Neither said much. The weight of everything they'd uncovered sat heavy in the air. Just after 11, a man in a white button-up and navy slacks walked in and headed straight for the back. Clara noticed first. Who's that? She asked. Landon followed her gaze. That's Brian, corporate compliance. She raised an eyebrow. You move fast. He didn't answer. He walked to the back and found Brian already scanning the storage logs pinned to the wall. Start here, Landon said. Then I want you at Eastwood by 4. Pull every record Rick ever signed off on. Brian nodded and got to work. Back on the floor, a new customer approached the counter. A tall man in his late 50s, gray beard, stiff posture. He glanced around, then leaned toward Clara. Rick still manager here? He asked. Clara looked over at Landon, then back at the man. Not anymore. The man gave a short nod. Good. He banned me for asking if the restroom was accessible. Said we were clogging up the place. I've got a mobility issue. He knew that. Landon walked over. You remember when this was? January, the man said. Didn't make a scene, just left, but I never came back. I'm the owner, Landon said. I'm sorry that happened. It won't again. The man looked surprised. You're the owner? Yes. The customer studied him for a moment, then gave a short nod and walked to a table near the window. Clara leaned in. That's the 3rd person who said something like that this week. Landon didn't respond. He just stared out the window for a second, jaw tight. By noon, Amber returned from the office, shoulders squared, eyes alert. How'd it go? Clara asked. We started drafting the new onboarding modules, Amber said. Landon wants it to be values-based, less rules, more culture. Real examples. Clara looked at Landon. That's smart. Amber pulled a folder from her tote. I added a section about what to do if you see something off, even if it's a manager, with contact info that goes straight to oversight, not the district lead. Clara looked at the folder, then at Landon. That wasn't there before. It is now, he said. Suddenly, Tasha stepped out from the back hallway, holding a paper in her hand. "Hey," she said, voice low. "I found this in the old schedule binder, thought you'd want to see it." She handed it to Landon, a folded sheet with handwritten notes. Rick's handwriting. Amber cut to weekends only, Tasha no more doubles, Lewis monitor breaks. Next to each name was a single letter, ATL. On the back was a list of preferred names, all white-sounding. All people who no longer worked there. Clara leaned over his shoulder. He was targeting them. Landon folded the paper slowly. "Get HR on the line," he said. Now, he walked to the back office and shut the door. 10 minutes later, when he returned, his face was calm but unreadable. "HR is drafting formal letters," he said. "Rick won't be eligible for rehire anywhere in the industry. We're also notifying the labor board. This crosses the line from poor leadership into civil violation territory." Amber looked stunned. "You're reporting him?" "Yes." "And we'll offer statements to any employee who wants to file." Tasha blinked. "Nobody's ever done that before." Landon looked at them both. "Then it's about time someone did." He turned to Clara. "Start reworking the hiring pipeline. No one gets promoted without a peer review. I want eyes from within the team. No more top-down decisions in isolation." Clara nodded. "Understood." The rest of the shift moved slowly, the atmosphere heavier but clearer. Customers came and went, drinks were made, tables wiped, but the silence between the team had changed. It wasn't fear anymore, it was processing. By the time the afternoon lull arrived, Landon stepped outside and stood beneath the awning, looking out over the street. Amber joined him a minute later. "I didn't think any of this would change," she said. He kept his eyes on the road. "Neither did I. Until I saw it for myself." She folded her arms. "Are you going to keep doing this, going undercover?" "Not like this," he said. "But I'm not staying behind a desk anymore. I built this place to be different. I forgot what that meant." Amber didn't reply. He looked at her. "You still want to manage one of these someday?" She lifted her chin. "I do." "Good," he said. "Because I want you to shadow Clara starting next week. You'll help us train the new hires, build the foundation right this time." Amber's eyes didn't widen, they didn't tear up, she just nodded once. Like she already knew, inside, the café buzzed with a quiet rhythm. Not perfect, but moving forward. And Landon knew this time it wouldn't slip again. By the following Monday, Landon walked into the café just as the morning light filtered through the front windows. The soft sound of grinders and steam wands hummed in the background. Clara stood at the counter, clipboard in hand, nodding as Amber explained something while pointing to the new prep chart taped near the espresso station. He waited until they finished before stepping forward. Amber saw him first. "Morning," she said, handing over a laminated checklist. "Prep guide for new hires," she added. "Clara said it's best to include it where it's visible so no one's guessing." Landon scanned the list. "Looks solid." "Color-coded, time-stamped, labeled by station." "We tested it all weekend," Clara said. "Made a few changes after Saturday's rush." Landon looked at the floor behind the counter, clean, dry, clutter-free. Every cup stack faced outward. The syrup bottles were labeled and uniform. The energy in the room was different, not forced but focused. "Where's Tasha?" he asked. "She's training the 2 new baristas at Eastwood today," Clara said. "We rotated her out early to keep her from burning out. She's been opening 5 days straight." "Good call." Amber stepped aside as a customer approached, and Clara took the order with practiced ease. Landon noticed that the customer, a woman with a walker, was greeted at eye level and offered a seat while her drink was prepared. A small thing, but intentional. He moved toward the side hallway where a folding table had been set up with a stack of new hire packets and a sign and sheet. Above it, a corkboard displayed the new reporting protocol Amber had helped design. The wording was simple, clear, no corporate fluff. Landon turned when he heard footsteps. Lewis stepped in from the back, wiping his hands on a towel. "Deliveries checked in," he said. "I moved the dairy to the far fridge to keep the walk-in from overcrowding." "Who signed off?" "I did." Clara double-checked. "Expirations are all next week or later," Landon nodded. "How's your grandmother?" "She's stable," Lewis said. "Still at the hospital, but doing better. Thanks for the shift change." You covered this place during its worst. We've got you now. Lewis nodded once and returned to the kitchen. Landon crossed the café and sat at a side table where he had a clear view of the floor. Every few minutes, he jotted a note or observed how customers were greeted. When a man in a delivery uniform dropped his cup and spilled coffee on the tile, Amber appeared before he could react, offering a towel and a fresh drink without hesitation. She didn't look to Clara. She just acted. At noon, the café closed for 1 hour. A handwritten sign on the door read, "Team break reopens at 1 p.m." This was new. A temporary measure Landon introduced for the next 2 weeks to give the staff a reset during the transition. Inside, chairs were pushed aside and boxed lunches were handed out. Clara placed a large carafe of iced tea on the middle table. Amber passed around survey cards asking for anonymous feedback about the new systems. "This is optional," she said, setting extras near the register. "But we're using it to shape the next round of changes." "Everything will be read." Landon stood at the front, not to make a grand speech, but because people naturally looked to him. "I know this came fast," he said. "And I know some of you don't trust it yet, that's fair, but this isn't a patch, this is a reset. If you see something that doesn't align with what we're building, tell someone. And if you don't feel safe doing that, then we've failed again." No applause followed, just quiet nods and focused expressions. After the break, Amber pulled Clara aside. "There's one more thing," she said, voice low. "I got an email from Janelle. She heard what happened through one of the old group chats. She said she's willing to talk to HR if we need her to." Clara didn't hesitate. "Forward it straight to Landon. And tell her we'll support whatever she needs." At 2:15, a man entered wearing a navy vest and company badge. Mid-30s, firm posture, no wasted movement. He introduced himself as the investigator from compliance and asked to speak to each staff member privately. Landon led him to the back office and handed over the final compiled logs from the café, all of Rick's scheduling notes, payroll summaries, and staff turnover data. "I want this part closed," Landon said. "No more dragging it out." "It will be," the man replied. By 4, the café was running again at full capacity. A steady stream of customers flowed through the doors, some regulars, some new. Landon watched as Amber trained a walk in hire on how to wrap pastries for display. "Keep the wrap tight but not crimped," she said. "It's about making it look like someone cared." The new hire, probably 19 or 20, nodded and mimicked the motion. Amber corrected her gently, then stepped back and let her try again. Clara approached Landon near the window. "She's ready," she said. "I know. You want to make it official?" "Not yet," he said. "Let her keep building, she'll know when it's time." Clara nodded, then turned as a customer asked for assistance with a loyalty card issue. Outside, the sky had shifted. The late afternoon light cast a soft glow across the floor. Landon stood for a moment longer, then walked toward the back, where the new uniforms were stacked on a shelf, simple, durable, without flashy branding. Just a patch that read, "You matter here." He took one and set it aside for Amber. At closing, they gathered briefly behind the counter. No speeches this time. Just a few exchanged nods, quiet goodnights, and tired but steady smiles. As Clara locked the door, Landon pulled her aside one last time. "There's an opening at the north side location," he said. "It's in rough shape, poor retention. Weak leadership." "What are you thinking?" Clara asked. "I want you to go in, stay for 60 days, not to fix it from above, but to find someone inside who can." Clara tilted her head. Like Amber, exactly like her, she considered, then nodded. "I'll leave someone strong here to keep this on track." "Good." They stood in silence for a few seconds. "You ever think about how close we came to losing this entire team?" Clara asked. "I try not to," Landon replied. "But I won't forget it." The alarm beeped as they stepped out into the evening. Amber walked past, earbuds in, tote bag over her shoulder. She gave a brief wave without breaking stride. Landon watched her disappear down the sidewalk, then turned to Clara. "We didn't save a café," he said. "We saved the people inside it." Clara didn't respond. She didn't need to. They locked the door, turned off the lights, and left the building quiet behind them. Everything else was still in motion. But this team was finally steady.